So chapter 12 is titled Bhakti Yoga, and I forgot to give you the single word summary for yesterday's chapter. So chapter 12 begins with Arjuna asking a question: which form of worship is better? Is it better to worship the impersonal aspect, or is it better to worship the personal form? And then we discover that Krishna clearly states that worshipping his personal form is most perfect way of worshipping him. And also worshipping the Lord as his devotee is also an easier path to achieve our ultimate goal of Krishna Prema. And the Lord also talks about how his devotees are perfect. And then the Lord gets into the different stages of bhakti, beginning with the most perfectional stage of a pure devotee who's always absorbed in the thoughts of Lord Krishna and who's always preoccupied in service of Krishna. So they do not deviate from their path. They are fixed up, they are dridhavrita, they are determined, they are enthusiastic. Their service to the Lord is uninterrupted. Their service to the Lord is unmotivated. Unmotivated means what? Unmotivated means their motive is not to achieve anything material. That you could consider as unmotivated. Their sole objective is to serve the Lord and to please the Lord. That is their sole objective. And we discovered how Lord Krishna says, well, if you cannot perform this pure devotional service, then at least you can engage yourself in what we call sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means practicing, following the regulative principles. Normally, these regulative principles are there in the Shastras, but as per time, place, circumstance, acharyas will come and establish what you need to practice for that particular time, place, and circumstance. So in our case, the Lord decided to send his pure devotee in the form of his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And he established the chanting of 16 rounds or 16 malas of the Hare Krishna mantra every day, following the 4 regulative principles, which is no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex, which are also the 4 legs of dharma. So if you violate these 4 principles, then there will be significant degradation in society. Values systems will collapse, corruption will increase. So all of this are outcomes of violating these 4 or not adhering to these 4 regulative principles. And then Lord Krishna says, well, if you cannot perform sadhana bhakti, then he says, at least you can work for me. Whatever work you're doing, if you're not able to follow the ABCD formula, can you please work for me and offer the results to me? Then if you cannot work for me, can you at least work for the sake of working? And then he says, well, if you cannot perform karma yoga, which is either sakama karma yoga or nishkama karma yoga, you can try practicing jnana yoga. And if jnana yoga is difficult for you, maybe you can try dhyana yoga, and eventually you'll reach perfection. So you can see that Lord Krishna is casting his net so wide to capture as many jivatmas as he can. And then Krishna talks about the difficulty of focusing on his impersonal aspect, Brahman. So he uses the word troublesome twice. And he also uses the word difficult, that this process is difficult. And he says advancement in Jnana Yoga or Dhyana Yoga is troublesome. But if you're performing Karma Yoga, it's easier to reach the stage of Bhakti Yoga simply by adding Krishna to the equation. Because in Karma Yoga, anyway, your senses are utilized, perhaps in sense gratification, perhaps in charity, but simply by adding Krishna to the equation, we come to the platform of trying to serve Krishna. So practically, how does that work? So let's say you have walked into the temple, you're new to ISKCON. In the beginning, you really don't understand even sadhana bhakti because you have not associated with devotees long enough to understand what are the regulative principles, what are the do's and don'ts. You just step into the temple. You're attracted to all the activities that are going on in the temple. Let's say you are very good at creativity. Or let's say you're good at cooking. So innately when you see sevas being performed, and when you hear that there is an opportunity to perform seva, you are actually only interested in demonstrating that you want to use your talent, that's all. You are not thinking, I want to serve Krishna. You are not thinking, I want to serve the other devotees. You are thinking, I want to use my skill. So this is how the journey begins. Your initial intent is, how can I demonstrate my capability? How can I use my strength? It may also be tinged with a desire to prove that you're a good cook. That is okay. But that's how the journey begins. Generally, the journey begins with service. Even though in your mind that service is not necessarily directed towards Krishna. You're doing that service to please you or to show off to others that you're good at something. That is okay. That is what attracts you in the beginning. And that is your journey from Karma Yoga. Slowly, by associating with devotees, you understand the importance of the mood of service. You begin to chant, you begin to attend the programs in the temple. You may come for Mangalarti early in the morning. You may offer ghee lamb to the Lord during Kartik month. Slowly, you will begin to learn things by simply being in the association of other devotees. And slowly your Karma Yoga becomes Bhakti Yoga. It's as simple as that. Which is why Krishna is linking Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga here. Although in the ladder, Karma Yoga is supposed to be at the bottom. But it's that easy to use your talent and your innate nature to demonstrate your talent. After a few months, you're actually practicing sadhana bhakti. You're beginning to follow the rules and regulations. You hear about, oh, you're supposed to give up tea and coffee, otherwise you cannot cook for the Lord. And if you're a really good cook, trust me, you will give it up because you want to cook. So this is how you get attracted to performing service for the pleasure of Krishna and not necessarily to please yourself. So the transformation happens through the association of devotees. And Krishna talks about the disposition of the devotees. Right? What is their attitude towards themselves? How do they deal with the other living entities? How do they respond to difficult situations? And then what is their interaction with the Lord? Now I'm going to recite a very small pastime to demonstrate the importance of association and the importance of staying connected to Krishna. So in the Sri Sampradaya, there is a very great Acharya known as Yamunacharya. It is after Yamunacharya, Ramanujacharya comes. As a young child, he is a great Pandit. His name was Alabandar. Later on, he takes the name of Yamunacharya. When he was just a child, he participates in a debate, and he comes from a Brahmana family, very pious family, worshippers of Lord Krishna or Lord Narayan. And he defeats the most well-known Pandit of that time. And through this debate, he actually wins a kingdom and he becomes the king. So his grandfather, Nada Muni, was also a great devotee of Krishna. But even being a young child, winning the kingdom, he decides that it is now his duty to perform his responsibilities as a king. And he becomes engrossed in running his kingdom. And essentially, he gives up practicing bhakti. So, Nada Muni, his grandfather, when he is on his deathbed, he's thinking of his grandson, how he's become so caught up in running the kingdom, and he wanted to help his grandson come back to the path of Krishna consciousness. So what does he do? He has a disciple by the name Rama Mishra. He decides to send his disciple, and he tells his disciple on his deathbed, my last wish is this: you bring back my son to the path of bhakti. So the disciple accepts this instruction and now has to concoct a plan on how to get the king away from his kingdom. How to get Yamunacharya away from this kingdom, back to the path of bhakti. Now he's just a ordinary Brahmana. He's not connected to the king. He knows it's going to be difficult to get an audience with the king. So what does he do? He devises a very intelligent way of getting the attention of the king. So every day he would purchase bunches of spinach and take it to the cook who was preparing the meals for the king every day. The kind of spinach that he bought is supposed to increase the amount of intelligence in oneself. That's all he would do. Every day he would buy this particular kind of spinach. He will go and give it to the cook and tell the cook, you prepare some nice dish and make sure you serve it to the king every day. And Yamunacharya was enjoying the spinach dish every day. Every day, different types of preparations of the spinach were being served to him. One day, Ram Mishra deliberately decides not to purchase the spinach and not to give it to the cook. That day, when the cook is serving the meal, prasadam, to Yamunacharya, Yamunacharya asks, where is that spinach? How come you have not made me that spinach today? At that time, the cook tells him, actually, I don't know. There is a gentleman that used to come every day, bring a bunch of spinach and request me to make preparations for you. Today, he hasn't come. And Yamunacharya gets intrigued. Who's this gentleman who's coming every day to give spinach just so that dishes can be made for me from that spinach? So eventually, Ram Mishra gets invited to the king's sabha. And over there, Ram Mishra tells him, I am a disciple of your grandfather, Nada Muni. And he has left a great treasure for you. And he wants you to have it. At that time, Yamunacharya was getting ready to prepare for some warfare. And he thought, oh, what perfect timing. I could use this wealth in my battle. So he asks Ram Mishra, I'm ready to come with you. Where is this wealth? Or he actually tells Ram Mishra, can you bring that wealth to me? And Ram Mishra tells him, it is too heavy for me to carry. I cannot do it. You have to come. So the king decides, okay, I will come. And then Ram Mishra lays down a condition. He says, it's a topmost secret. If you come, you must come alone. Nobody should accompany. The king says, okay, that's fine. And the king asks, how far away is this place? Ram Mishra says, it will take us 3 nights, 3 days and 3 nights, we'll reach there. So the first night, they've stepped out of the palace and they're going towards wherever this treasure is. That night, Ram Mishra opens the Bhagavad Gita and he reads it loudly. What chapter is he reading? He's reading chapter 12. So he reads the Bhakti Yoga chapter to the king. Hearing these 20 shlokas, Yamunacharya starts crying. It reminds him of his past life and he thinks, what have I done? Second night. Ram Mishra again reads chapter 12 and he comes to shloka 8, the perfection of devotional service. Again, hearing the shloka 8 to the second night, the king starts weeping and he tells Ram Mishra, this is the greatest wealth that one can ever have. I really don't want that other wealth that you are talking about. So that night, they both are deeply engrossed in talking about Bhakti Yoga. The king the following morning says, I'm very, very satisfied. I have, deviated from the path of Bhakti. This is the greatest wealth that you've given me, which is to bring this Bhakti Yoga back into my life. And he says, I'm not interested in that other wealth. You can go your way, I will go my way. And Ram Mishra says, no. My spiritual master has told me that I have to give you this treasure, so I have to take you to that treasure. So the king reluctantly, Yamunacharya, reluctantly agrees. So after the third night, fourth morning, they arrive. Where do they arrive? Sriranga. And Ram Mishra takes Yamunacharya in front of Ranganatha and he says, this is your gift from your grandfather. This deity is the gift that your grandfather asked me to give. So taking darshan of this beautiful form of Ranganatha, the king gives up his kingdom. He actually donates half of the kingdom to Sri Rangam itself, to the temple. Half he gives it to somebody else and puts someone in charge of that kingdom. So after taking the darshan of this beautiful Ranganatha deity, he stays in Sri Rangam. And then he becomes a great acharya. He comes back to the path of bhakti. So you see how easy it is for us to get deviated from the path of bhakti, even though we may have begun our young lives in performing bhakti yoga. Somewhere along the way something happens and completely you forget Krishna. This is the importance of devotee association. So the acronym, I would say, rather than a single word summary for today's chapter, is KPI. What does KPI stand for? Any guesses? The acronym for chapter 12 is KPI.
Knowledge, practices, and attitude.
Knowledge, practices, and
Attitude.
I.
Attitude.
KPI.
Key performance indicator.
I can't hear, sorry.
Key performance indicator.
Key performance indicator, yes. You're a corporate man.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Key performance indicator. Well, we'll translate it to Krishna Prema indicators. The single word summary for today is manual, or we'll call it KPI. When you accept a job, you have to follow the contract, right? You are now officially, contractually employed in the service of Krishna, which means you have a contract that you need to adhere to. So literally, chapter 12 is your induction manual with all the fine print. If you follow this induction manual, you will achieve your KPIs, Krishna Prema indicators. So essentially, chapter 12 is how should you perform your role as a devotee so that you can get the reward that Lord Krishna has promised, which is going back to him. So with that, we will now move to the third section of the Bhagavad Gita. So today's chapter is titled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. The Sanskrit title for today's chapter is Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Vibhaga, Yoga. It is also known as Viveka Yoga. Viveka means the ability to discriminate. So Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Vibhaga Yoga. Prabhupada translates or gives the title, the English title of Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness, which is Prakriti, Purusha, and Consciousness. So before we begin, let's offer our humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So today's acronym is WISE. Chapter 13 again begins with questions from Arjuna. Then we discover what are the items of knowledge, what is the super soul, and what is enlightenment. But before we do that, let me just briefly touch upon this section 3 of the Bhagavad Gita. So technically, section 3 of the Bhagavad Gita is chapters 13 to 17. Because chapter 18 is a summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita. So whatever is in chapter 18, Krishna has already talked about. He'll just repeat things again in summary. So the third section of the Bhagavad Gita, we said the first section is all about Jivatma and you. You've got amnesia, you've forgotten who you are. Krishna has to re-establish your identity, tell you what your job responsibilities are. He offers you a job. He gives you the knowledge with which to perform the job. What is it that you're supposed to think about to be successful in the job? We also said that the second section of the Bhagavad Gita, which is chapters 7 to 12, is literally the job interview. But the second section is primarily about Paramatma, or Lord Krishna, the Supreme Lord. So Arjuna wants to know a little bit more detail about who are you, what kind of boss are you, what insurance policy you're going to give me, what's the password for me to be successful. Then what's the nature of the bhaktas? What is bhakti? The process to know you. And then finally, okay, so what's the contract that I'm signing? What is it that I need to follow? Now, there's a slight problem. Section 3 is also titled as all about Prakriti and all about the material world in which we are living, right? First one is Jivatma. Second section is Paramatma. Third is Prakriti, the triangle. Paramatma, Jivatma, and Prakriti. So this Prakriti is a prison house for us. And how can we be connected, being in prison, with Paramatma? So let's say the job interview is very successful. Arjuna has decided to take up Krishna's job offer after the interview is done. He has decided, I will work for you, Krishna. But one small problem. How can you work for Krishna when you're in jail? You're trapped in this jail. How can you perform your duties properly when you're in this jail? Because of your karmic influences, you're residing in this prison. You have to get out of this prison house. So how do you begin that journey to get out of this prison house? Is what is covered in this final section of the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna is going to logically walk Arjuna through the process of getting out of this prison house through the process of knowledge. Hence, this final section is also known as Sankhya Yoga. So it's an analytical study of material nature in the context of Jivatma and Paramatma, so that you know how to get out of here. So this chapter 13, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. You are in jail, and when you are in jail, you need an attorney to get you out of this jail. And Krishna tells Arjuna, I, as the Paramatma, will be your witness, will advocate and help you I will be the lawyer from within you, guiding you out of this prison house. The single word summary for chapter 13 is Paramatma. Krishna is so merciful. Even though he has created this prison and thrown you in here, actually, he has not thrown you in here. You've brought yourself here because of your own desires. Yet, Krishna is so merciful. He has come to help you as Paramatma, as a lawyer who's going to guide you out of this prison house called Prakriti. So this is the chapter where we will read about the analogy of two birds sitting on a tree. One bird is acting, the other bird is the witness as Paramatma. So the question for us is, how do you analyze the universe? How do you use your knowledge to understand the ways of Prakriti? How do you use knowledge to understand ourselves? How do you use the knowledge to understand the nature of the Lord? And with a firm understanding of all three, how can you begin your journey back to the spiritual world? So technically speaking, this section Krishna has already talked about, but he'll just go into much more details. So chapter 13 is a very difficult chapter to understand actually. But let's try to see how we can understand this. So Arjuna begins by asking questions. Let us see. What are the questions Arjuna is asking? So this chapter has 35 shlokas. So we'll quickly read the questions that Arjuna asks. 6 questions in shlokas 1 and 2. Arjuna said, "O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." So Arjuna's questions to Krishna is as follows. Krishna, can you please tell me what is kshetra? Kshetra meaning field. Who is the knower of the field? Or kshetrajna? What is jnana? Knowledge. What is jnaya? The object of knowledge. What is prakriti? Nature. And who is purusha? The person enjoying nature. Remember, Krishna talks earlier about how his superior energy in the form of jivatmas are actually exploiting nature. So, 6 questions. Kshetra, kshetrajna, prakriti, purusha, jnaya, jnana, and jnaya. So, when it comes to topics on the material realm, Krishna just quickly responds to those questions. He doesn't go into the details too much. So the Lord says in the same shloka, shlokas 1 and 2, he simply says, this body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and the one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. Bas. So our body, the physical body that we occupy, the subtle body that we are part of, Krishna says this is kshetra. Okay, so who's kshetrajna? Well, the person occupying this body is kshetrajna, the one who has to know and understand the body. There are actually 2 entities residing in the body, the soul and the super soul. So both the soul and the super soul are the knowers of this body. And then Krishna then draws a distinction. O scion of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. Now Krishna's adding one more explanation. What is knowledge? He's answered that question. What is knowledge? So he's drawing the distinction. As Kshetrajna, he is the supreme Kshetrajna because he understands all bodies, all the souls. Whereas we residing in our body at best can only understand ourselves or try to understand ourselves. This process of trying to understand ourselves in the context of Krishna, the super soul, Krishna is saying that is knowledge. Then Krishna says, now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted and what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influences are. So now Krishna is going to talk about, okay, if this body is the field of our activities, what are those field of our activities? What happens? And how does this knower of the field interact with the field and with Prakriti? So Krishna essentially will take us logically through how can we better understand our own nature? How can we understand the nature of this prison house? And how can we understand the nature of Paramatma? So we'll just quickly read the shlokas. Arjuna uvacha prakritim purusham chaiva kshetram kshetrajnameva cha etad veditum ichchami jnanam jneyam cha keshava. Arjuna said, O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, Purusha, and the field, and the knower of the field, and of knowledge, and the object of knowledge. To which Shri Bhagavan uvacha idam shariram kamteya kshetram iti abhidhiyate etadyo veti tat veti tam prahuhu kshetrajna iti tadvidaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, this body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and the one who knows this field is called the knower of the field. So 6 subjects covered in this chapter 13 is Prakriti. What is material nature? Purusha. Who is enjoying this material nature? Please remember, we are the secondary Purushas, we are not the primary Purushas. We are also enjoying nature, but the ultimate enjoyer is Krishna, Param Purusha. Jnana, knowledge. Gyeyam, what is the object of our knowledge? Kshetra, this body, and Kshetrajna, the person that knows that body. So on Purusha, 2 levels, the Jivatma and Paramatma. Kshetrajna, also 2 levels. We know our bodies, Krishna knows every bodies. So Krishna draws a distinction between the soul and the super soul. The super soul is the super knower because it knows what each body is performing, simply sitting as a witness. The super soul is the supreme proprietor and supreme controller. The word Ishvara or Isha means controller. So the Lord says the Jivatma is trying to control nature in a limited way, trying to subjugate material nature for the sole purposes of enjoying themselves and making their lives comfortable. But Krishna says he is the supreme controller. He is the supreme enjoyer. So we are all Ishvaras with a lowercase I. Then we understand that Lord Shiva is also known as Param Ishvara, because he is actually overseeing, along with Durga Devi, the Prakriti, material universe. But the ultimate Ishvara is Lord Krishna residing in the spiritual world. The super soul is infallible and it is always superior to the Jivatma. The Jivatma is always fallible and is always subordinate to Paramatma. Eternally, that will be the case. So now, what are the items of knowledge? Krishna says the body, the soul, the super soul, the three of this constitutes knowledge. Understanding these three. Understanding body means you could also use the word Prakriti here because it is of material nature. So Prakriti, Jivatma, Paramatma. Knowing these three is knowledge. And then Krishna talks about the 20 qualities of his devotees. What do you think is the first quality that Krishna talks about? The very first quality of a devotee. Any idea? What is the very topmost quality of a devotee? Has to be there.
Surrender. Humility and surrender.
Humility. Yes. Right answer.
Faith.
Krishna begins with humility. So Krishna talks about the following 20 qualities of his devotees: humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, accepting a spiritual master is a quality of Krishna's devotee. That's the sixth quality. Accepting spiritual master. Then Krishna goes on. Cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of sense objects, no false ego. His devotee perceives the differences and understands the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. Detachment, freedom from relationships, freedom from relationships on the bodily platform. Even-mindedness, constant engagement in devotional service. Aspiring to live in a solitary place. Detachment from society. Importance of self-realization. Search for the absolute truth. These are the 20 qualities that Krishna enumerates that resides within his devotees. Yeah. So we'll just quickly read the actual translation of the shloka. The 20 qualities in shlokas 8 to 12. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. And then Krishna's final statement. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. By listing the 20 qualities of his devotees, Krishna has says, I am declaring this to be knowledge. Anything else outside of this, Krishna is saying, is ignorance. Ignorance. So all our research and development endeavors in material society, Krishna deems to be ignorance. So such a categorical statement that knowledge is this narrow band of 20 qualities of his devotees. Anything else, Krishna says, you're wasting your time. So now Krishna has answered the question of what is knowledge in the context of Prakriti, Paramatma, and Purusha, and primarily in the context of his bhaktas. How does one gain this knowledge? So the first thing Krishna talks about is Ananya Yogena. It's the most important quality to achieve this knowledge of those 20. And of course, eventually imbibe that as part of your character and your attitude, your approach, your vision of life. Ananya Yogena. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. The essential quality is Acharya Pashanam, accepting and being under the protection of a bona fide spiritual master. So if one needed any proof that Krishna is saying, accept a living guru, this is it. Accepting a bona fide spiritual master, serving him with humility. Other important qualities, yes, we said the topmost. Krishna talks about amanitvam. Amanitvam is actually it's a negative statement. It's not a positive statement. The word amanitvam in Sanskrit actually means I am not the doer. Literally it translates to I am not the doer. Amanitvam, ahimsa, atma vinigraha, aratir jana samsadi, detachment from general mass of people. So let's understand a few of this because it may be a little confusing. Krishna says be detached from your family. Freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. It simply means your priority is Krishna. But if the entire family is Krishna consciousness, oh, what a wonderful gift from Krishna, that the entire family is practicing Krishna consciousness. That is also quite rare, where the entire family comes together to do Bhakti Yoga. We have to be very fortunate to have that kind of a situation. So freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest simply means no undue attachment on the material platform that takes you away from Krishna. So if as a family that you're practicing Krishna consciousness together, then that is fine. But how do you, I think what Deepti Mataji said a few days back, what was that, Mataji, you used? Being attached? Something you said, you being affectionate but not attached, right? I think that was the phrase.
Yes,
Yeah, you use the term.
Not attached.
Yeah, being affectionate with your family members but not being attached.
Ji Mataji.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. And then Krishna says, living in a solitary place. So, how do you understand living in a solitary place? It's not running off somewhere into the forest. That is not what this means. Living in a solitary place means living among devotees where there is sincere practice of Krishna consciousness happening. For us, that solitary place is the temple. If the solitary place is not your own residence, then the solitary place is the temple. Because you can peacefully practice Krishna consciousness in the temple. And by doing that, you're detaching yourself from the general mass of people, For devotees, eventually, malls and all become very distasteful and becomes a very disturbing place for us. We prefer not to hang out in malls, shopping, doing this, doing that. We prefer to be in the temple because we acquire that taste to be with devotees who are nicely serving Krishna. If you ever come to our temple, it's always a busy place. There are always so many devotees doing so many things. So that itself makes for a very attractive environment. You also want to be there. It's peaceful, it is calm, the cows are there, the goshala is there. You can feed the cows, you can do some seva. You can sit in front of the deities and chant peacefully. So this is detachment from the general mass of people. So it doesn't mean you need to run away from city life, go in search of solitude somewhere deep in the forest. So associating with other devotees is practicing solitary confinement in the association of devotees. So how do you achieve these 20 qualities? The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So the essential quality for us is, if we take up Krishna consciousness seriously, then all of the other qualities are automatically developed. So Prabhupada repeatedly says, you don't have to do anything extra. You simply follow my instructions. Chant 16 rounds a day, follow the 4 regulative principles, be in the association of devotees, practice ABCD. Gradually, you will develop the quality of detachment. You will develop the quality of humility. You will develop the quality of service attitude. It will come. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to be conscious of it. It will just happen naturally, right? Like Mataji was saying, after having some challenges in the workplace and after having attended just a few classes, she's already seeing a change in her. This is the power of associating with devotees. This is the power of reading the Bhagavad Gita. Every day, not once in a blue moon when you're in trouble. When you're in trouble, it's too late. You may be too much in trouble, and it may be very difficult for you to extricate yourself out of problematic situations. But you can manage your problematic situations if every day you're grounded in what is actually important and relevant for us. We get too caught up with our own, dramas, personal dramas. We create drama in every situation where there is no drama at all. But we find a need for drama because it's like a disgusting self-fulfilling prophecy of being miserable. We can choose to be blissful, but we choose to be miserable because it is like that fly always going in search of the source. The analogy that we talked about a couple of days ago. We must be like the bumblebee, always in search of nectar. Always in search of nectar. But we've all become so conditioned to being flies. Always finding fault in others, always finding fault in situations. Nothing is perfect for us. We want everybody to accommodate us. We want everybody to bow down to us and say, you are the master, how can I serve you? We have such unrealistic expectations of others. This is the cause of our distress, because we are so vested in what others can do for us. But by simply chanting, associating with devotees, hearing the Bhagavad Gita, practicing Bhakti Yoga, you can begin to get rid of your own bad qualities that is preventing you from being in a blissful state. So practicing Krishna consciousness will lead you to that blissful state, will lead you to that detachment. You will just observe everything from outside, but you will not be rattled by anything and everything that comes your way. You are able to practice equanimity. Yes, things will happen. People will behave in all kinds of ways. What to do? You have to tolerate. You have to understand that that Jivatma is suffering due to ignorance. The cause of all of our suffering is avidya, ignorance. Then we come to the topic of the knower of this field, both the soul and the super soul. Krishna says, Gyeyam yat tat pravakshyami yajñatvam ashnute anadimat param brahma nasattanna sad uchyate. Krishna says, I shall now explain the noble, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, the beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. The word Brahman has different meanings depending on the context in which it is being used. When we say Brahman realization, we're talking about the effulgence emanating from the Lord's body in the spiritual world. That is Brahman. That is Brahma Jyotir, which is the destination of the Jnanis and Yogis if they are successful. Brahman also refers to that which is permanent and eternal, which is the spirit soul. The spirit soul has no beginning, but Krishna says it is subordinate. It's beyond the cause and effect of this material world. It is only encountering this distress because it has occupied this machinery in the form of the 400,000 different types of human bodies. Attribute of the soul, it is eternal, which means there is no date of birth, there is no expiration date. Anadi, that which does not have a beginning. It is subordinate to Krishna. It is always dependent on Krishna. And it is beyond the cause and effect of this world. So the soul is always yearning to be in association with the Lord. So now, who is the other knower of this body? The super soul. Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charamevacha sukshmatvat tadavijñeyam dhurastam chantike chatat. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is all near to all. Sounds like a riddle. What is Krishna saying? Although far, far away, he is also near to all. This is how we understand the shloka. Krishna pervades every single atom in this Brahmanda and all Brahmandas as Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. So without him, this universe cannot function. It's due to his presence, it is there. So when Krishna says he cannot be perceived through our material senses, because both the soul and the super soul are on the subtle platform. They are not on the gross platform. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. So Krishna resides within you as Paramatma. If he's so near to you, he's ensconced within your heart. So how can he be far, far away? He's there as a witness, right? He's present in you. He's watching you. He's observing your thoughts. He knows what your desires are. So when Krishna says he is far, far away, he means to those who don't acknowledge him. He keeps his distance. One can perceive Krishna when one serves Krishna. But if we are too preoccupied with our own sense enjoyment, of course, naturally, how will you perceive the Lord? You're too caught up in your own dramas, material dramas. You're too busy enacting them every day. How can you perceive Krishna? You've kept Krishna at length because you don't want to be his servant. Although eternally that is your only position, is you are the servant. So the attributes of the super soul, it is all pervading. The super soul has hands, legs, eyes, ears, heads, and faces everywhere. We just said it is subtle. But the super soul has the power, because the super soul has form. It can see everything. It is all reconciling. It is both inside the body and outside the body. It is transcendental. It has no material senses. It has a spiritual sense, Satchidananda Vigraha, Supreme Person. It is the source of all of the senses of the living entity, Hrishikesha, the person who controls our senses. The Supreme Soul is undivided. Again, it seems like a complicated terminology. If we are part and parcel of Krishna, of Paramatma, how is it that Paramatma is undivided? So every time the Jivatma separates from the Lord, does the Lord become less? That is the mysticism of Krishna. Even though we separate from him and we are part and parcel of him, he is ever expanding. You know, in the spiritual world, 2 plus 2 is 2, 2 minus 2 is also 2. We cannot comprehend this. In the spiritual world, 2 plus 2 is 2, 2 minus 2 is also 2. Everything stays constant even though things may be separating. So the super soul is residing in everyone. So who can know the soul and super soul? Iti kshetram tata jnanam geyam choktam samasatah madbhakta etad vijnana madbhavayopapadyate. Thus the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. So Krishna is now telling who can actually understand this. Who can understand Jivatma, who can understand Paramatma, who can understand Prakriti. He is saying only his devotees. Mad Bhakta. Only the Mad Bhakta can understand the Lord's nature. Then Krishna talks, this is the last section of the chapter, shlokas 20 to 35. So who is the real enjoyer? We said that there is a mini enjoyer in you and me, and then there is the ultimate enjoyer in the Supreme Lord. So Krishna then talks about the qualities of the Jiva, the qualities of material nature, the qualities of super soul. Who is a realized soul? acquiring jnana chakshu, divine knowledge. And then what's the destination? So the qualities of a jiva is there is no beginning or end. But the problem is the jiva is struggling hard for existence because we want to enjoy everything that we see around us. Everything looks so attractive. And we want to constantly enjoy ourselves. But the problem is in this prison house, it has been set up in such a way it is going to be the cause of endless frustration. That frustration should cause you to ask the question, why am I frustrated? Why am I suffering? And with that question begins your journey of spirituality by approaching a guru and understanding this knowledge. So the Jivatma is always frustrated, 8.4 million species based on action and desire. I'm trying to remember who posted the question yesterday about the plants and animals, the transmigration of the soul through the different various bodies. So who had posted that question?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
You had posted the question, Sumit Prabhu. Okay. So the answer to that question is quite mystical, Prabhu. There is something called Nitya Siddhas and Nitya Baddhas. This is accepted, but very, very difficult to understand. I can't go beyond this because I have no knowledge of this. So the Acharyas explain that the Jivatmas fall into two categories, the Nitya Siddhas and the Nitya Baddhas. The Nitya Siddhas are always in the spiritual world, they never separate from Krishna. Never, ever, 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 ever. Hence they are called Nitya Siddhas. They are always serving the Lord in the spiritual world. The Nitya Baddhas, on the other hand, for some reason, keep separating themselves from Krishna. So it's the Nitya Baddhas that come and occupy these various bodies. So at the beginning of creation, Lord Vishnu decides who occupies what body. If you've already had a prior human life, then you will get your next body based on your karma. So initially, the violation that we have is we want to enjoy ourselves separate from Krishna. What is that mood of enjoyment that you wanted? That is determined initially by Lord Vishnu. So yes, the plants, the animals, the beasts, none of them have karma. They do not experience karma. Karma is solely for the 400,000 species of human beings. We are given the highest intelligence so that we can make the right choices. So the first time you stepped out of the spiritual world and took the human form, that's when you began to deposit things into your karma account. Now for you and me, it seems like the transmigration of the soul from the aquatics all the way to human life seems like millions and millions of years. But think of time in the context of universal time. It's just a flash of a second. Our life, although we think, my God, we're living 75 years, 80 years old, 90 years old is a long life. Think of your life in the context of universal time. It is just a flash. So we are thinking, my God, we have to wait for so long to achieve human form. No, it is happening very, very quickly in the context of universal time. Mere milliseconds, you've occupied a human body. The qualities of material nature. It is beginningless. So material nature is also eternal. The only thing is, it is manifested, and then it goes back into unmanifest state, then comes back into manifest state. So that cycle keeps going on. It's a temporary manifestation. It keeps transforming. It provides residential quarters to the jiva. This is the prison house that we're talking about, and it controls the jiva through the three modes: sattvagun, rajagun, and tamagun. So earlier I was saying that the Bhagavad Gita primarily consists of 5 topics: Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma. Of this, 4 of them are eternal. And only karma is not eternal. Thank God for the small mercies. Karma can be changed. Karma can be eliminated. Time is eternal. Prakriti is eternal. Jivatma is eternal. Paramatma is eternal. Qualities of the super soul. The super soul is the transcendental enjoyer. He is the proprietor. He is the witness. And he sanctions your desires. Provided you have whatever credits that you need to fulfill your desires. So coming back to the same concept, the super soul is there, the soul has a desire, nature implements that desire based on your past karma. Prakriti decides what body you should occupy based on what the super soul has sanctioned. So you in this life are deciding what body you are going to occupy in your next life. Devotees, there is no guarantee that you'll take a human form next time. No guarantee. And because there is no guarantee, we have to make up our mind. We want to exit this place once and for all. We don't want to take the risk of even acquiring another human form again, because God knows who we will come into contact with and how we will forget Krishna. So now coming to the topic of realized jivas. What the living entity realizes when they are enlightened with this knowledge that Krishna has talked about, the 6 topics. What can they do? They can distinguish between spirit and matter. That is the first confidential aspect. They see the super soul as their companion and guide. Remember I said the soul is considered the Chaitya Guru, revealing to you from within. And by performing a karma, the Jivatma becomes the non-doer. No karmic influences. Final topic. Jnana Chakshu. Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam stavara jangamam kshetra kshetrajna samyogat tadvidhi bharatarshabha. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, sthavara means stationary, non-moving. Jangamam, moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. It's a combination of Prakriti and Jivatma that causes all these various varieties. Of course, Krishna creates the initial variegatedness, but this is how we acquire bodies. Acquiring Jnana Chakshu, by gaining knowledge about the constituents of the body, the difference between the body and soul, the equal vision, because Krishna says, when you achieve the platform of Krishna consciousness, you will begin to see everybody, every Jivatma as connected to the Lord, as the super soul present within that living entity. And such a Jivatma who's practicing Krishna consciousness achieves control over the mind and senses. Final shloka. Destination. Kshetra kshetrajnanair evam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye viduryanti te param. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So essentially Lord Krishna is saying, the only people who even accept that this is a prison house is those who are searching for the truth. The minute they know that this Prakriti is a prison house for them, they then begin their journey on how to escape this bondage. The first step to that understanding is knowing that you're not this body, that you are eternally a spirit soul, and your eternal residence is in Vaikuntha or in Golok Vrindavan, where you experience bliss by serving Lakshmi Narayana or by serving Radha Krishna. So this is the summum bonum of the knowledge that helps you exit this material world, this prison house. Krishna as Paramatma is guiding you. Krishna, through his instructions in the Bhagavad Gita, is your attorney. You need an attorney to get out of the jail. An attorney knows the laws of the land and he can argue your case. In this case, a unique attorney who has not only created the laws, but knows how to execute those laws, but also knows how to use those laws to get you out of this place. In the material world, the lawmakers is different from the person sitting in judgment. But this unique case of Krishna, he's both the lawmaker and the attorney. Haribol. So Krishna is so merciful that he helps you exit this material universe. You know, I will end with a couple of, stories. You may think this Bhagavad Gita is so hard to understand. As Mataji said, she tried reading, she couldn't finish the first chapter. Can't understand anything. But with determination and under the guidance of Guru, you can. So one day a Guru asks his disciple, go get me some water. And the disciple picks up the bucket and notices that the bucket has a lot of holes in it. But he's very faithful to his Guru. So he goes, picks up a bucket of water and brings it to his Guru. But much to his frustration, there is no water in the bucket because by the time he reaches the Guru, the bucket is empty. And he looks at his Guru, and Guru looks at the bucket and he tells him, go get me a bucket of water. So this disciple does the same thing. The same thing happens. He runs a little faster this time. The result is the same. Guru looks at the bucket, there is no water in the bucket. Guru instructs him again, go get me a bucket of water. So the disciple very faithfully runs off to go get the bucket of water. He runs even faster this time. Result is the same. No water in the bucket. The Guru smiles at him and says, very nice. The disciple humbly asks him, what was the purpose for sending me on this errand? I couldn't get you the bucket of water. Guru very nicely explained, I just wanted the bucket to be clean. The analogy that we can understand from this is that we may continue to read the Bhagavad Gita day in and day out, and we have to struggle through it sometimes because we may not understand concepts very easily. But your consciousness is being purified through that process of just washing your mind and intelligence and senses in the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. Slowly, your contaminated consciousness is becoming purified. So the process may appear to be fruitless for you. It may be frustrating. But the acharyas say you should have faith that it is cleansing you. It is cleansing you. It is not a waste of time. It is not a waste of effort. Although it may seem like we are not progressing, you are progressing. So transformation is happening without you even being aware of it. One day suddenly you realize, oh yeah, I stopped doing that thing. I stopped being angry. I stopped being miserable. I am smiling more often. I am kinder to others. You'll observe this yourself. It will happen. It will happen. Guarantee, guarantee, guarantee it will happen. But you need to stay in touch with devotees. It's not that devotees are perfect, but in their association, you get inspiration. In their association, your battery is getting recharged. So coming back to the topic of why association is so important. Sadhu Sangha is very, very important part of our sadhana. So this is the beauty of it. This is the bucket story. It's not a waste of time. You are being purified. So don't give up this process. Stick to it. Be determined. Be enthusiastic. Sometimes you may not be enthusiastic. You may become lazy and say, I don't feel like getting up early to attend Mataji's Bhagavad Gita class. I'll just listen to her recording. Don't give yourself room to be lazy. That is Maya Devi knocking on your door. I heard one preacher say this, good things will come knocking on your door just once. Bad things will come knocking on your door and they'll keep knocking on your door until you open the door. So when good things come, they'll knock on your door once. When bad things come, they just will keep knocking on your door until you open the door and allow them in. They'll keep trying. Maya Devi's job is to keep trying to distract you from Krishna. Don't allow her to do that. Stay in the association of devotees. Take the shelter of devotee association. Take the shelter of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says, actually Krishna says, if you're under my shelter, I'm taking care of you. Maya Devi is nowhere close to you. But practicing Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says, is like walking on a knife's edge. Little slip and you're in contact with Maya Devi. Just a little slip. We can just get carried away. You heard that Narada Muni's pastime? How he gets carried away from Krishna. Forgets who Krishna is, becomes busy with married life, has children and starts worrying about them. That is Maya Devi. So Krishna pulls a very nice trick on Narada Muni to let him know that is how powerful his material energy, Prakriti, Durga Devi is. She can bring you under control with just a snap of her fingers. That's it. So we'll stop here. Vancha kalpatarupyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo.